It's a blessing when you actually get to win lane as an ADC player. The early game is when you have the least agency out of any role, so getting into the mid game with a lead is the perfect setup to carry your games. But then something inevitably goes wrong. You're one shot by the enemy Akali anyway, your lead is gone, and it feels like you could do nothing about it, right? What Skillcapped sees on a regular basis is that although ADC players may sometimes get a lead during the lane phase, around 90% of the time, they make a game-losing mistake within just 2 minutes of breaking the bot tower. Some of the decisions that throw their leads are absolutely ridiculous, so in this guide, we'll be testing you to see if you make the same common mistakes we see all the time. Are you an ADC that throws their lead, or do you actually know how to snowball the game? Let's find out. Our first replay features the Queen Marksman of winning lane, Caitlyn. At around the 17-minute mark, it seems that the laning phase has been going on for long enough. Caitlyn's team does what every one of us dreams about. They actually come to help her kill the enemy bot lane to help take the tower. She ends up getting a huge shutdown, destroys the structure, and is now in a prime position to carry. But here's what happens next. Everyone on Caitlyn's team rotates towards the dragon and does it together. At the same time, the enemy team took the Rift Herald by cross-mapping while Caitlyn's whole team was busy down there. We'll just go ahead and let you know that staying here to do the dragon with everyone was definitely a mistake. Not only did Caitlyn know that 2 of the enemy members were dead, but she's also aware of where 2 others are. It feels like at Skillcapped we cover this all the time, but you really cannot afford to be wasting your time doing something that you don't need to. If your jungler is capable of soloing the dragon and can do it uncontested, then do something else to be more efficient with your time. Instead, she's behind on tempo now. Let's go back to the moment where she made the wrong choice. Right after killing bot and taking the tower, what do you think Caitlyn's best option is? First, take a look at the information available. Here's her items and the amount of gold that she has at the moment. We see both Graves and Aurelia pushing in the top and mid towers. And although Rek'Sai is taking these Krugs beside her, the Blue and Gromp are both up in her own jungle. Perhaps those are worth investing time into in order to acquire more gold. So, which would you choose? A. Cross-map the bottom lane tower with your team, since most of the opponents are either dead or visible on the map. B. Take a recall and go defend to either top or mid. Or C. Take Rek'Sai's jungle camps as she does the dragon to get some extra gold. Let's break down the wrong answers first, starting with A. Although Caitlyn wasn't aware that her opponents had taken Herald yet, you should generally assume that the enemy team will cross-map an objective when your team commits to one side of the map. Staying here with this many of her allies is not worth the risk that her opponents take Herald and push significantly faster than she ever could. Not only that, but that would force her team to be sharing only one lane of farm and tower gold, which is worse than her opponents farming 2 lanes. And that's if they can even take this tower in the first place before the enemy bot respawns. To put it simply, this is a horrible answer. Looking back on option C, this should immediately be a red flag in your eyes. Even if the play was technically correct, which it is not, taking your jungler's camps as you leave them to solo dragon is asking to get flamed and griefed for the rest of the game. Not worth it at all. So, by process of elimination, looking back at her choices, the answer ended up being B. Almost every single replay we'll cover in this guide has this exact mistake from every ADC. They take tower and refuse to base with the significant amount of gold that they've earned. It may sound really obvious, but if there's nothing important in close proximity to you after you take tower, then just base and spend your gold. You'll see how big of a problem this is the entire guide. In this case, Caitlyn had more than enough gold to complete her dagger into Zeal, and then pick up another component on top of that. The ideal play this game would be to base, buy some items, and then go defend either top or mid. Afterwards, she could siege whichever lane she chose with her significant item advantage. Instead, she ended up staying out on the map with way too much gold. This caused her to just sit in mid with her Veigar, unable to pressure anything. They're both either too low on health or too weak from not buying items to do anything. By idling around doing nothing, her opponents just placed Herald in top, taking the inner tower completely for free and almost killing the inhibitor tower on top of that. She went from the dream scenario of getting a 4-man dive in bot to losing complete control of the game in under 2 minutes from one silly decision. Alright, let's take a look at another example. In this game, the Jinx gets a lead just like the previous Caitlyn and manages to take the bot lane tower. As we said though, she commits the exact same mistake as the previous Caitlyn and refuses to recall to spend her gold for a while. She just sits in lane, not really doing anything. These are gold to platinum replays, by the way. We're not cherry picking some ridiculous bronze examples. It really is this bad. Somehow, this wasn't the biggest error we'll be looking at from Jinx, though. She refuses to base, sitting on a mountain of gold, and it ends up rotating towards the center of the map. This is because her Master Yi is starting the Rift Herald, and she wants to sync up with her team to fight the objective. But right before she gets to the action, her Yi gets ulted by the enemy Malphite and instantly killed. Based on what you've seen, what do you think you'd do at this moment? A. Back off and take the jungle camps in the area since her jungler is dead. B. Push mid and take the exposed tower while the enemy team does Herald. C. Commit to the fight since vital enemy spells are on cooldown. Or D. Base and spend all the gold Jinx is sitting on. Any single one of these answers besides C was a completely fine option. You're not always going to make the best play possible in every game, but you need to recognize when something is bad and to immediately get out. Take a look at the scoreboard. The game is basically dead even, but Jinx hasn't based yet, as we've talked about. So they're not only down a member, but she's technically not even strong because she's sitting on around 2,000 gold at the moment. When you have a lead and a bounty on your head, you cannot afford to make these kinds of mistakes. Again, we will say that if Jinx had spent her gold before coming here, that she'd potentially be able to carry this fight 4v5. But with the way things were, the actual lesson here is to spam back pings on your teammates when they commit to something stupid. Then don't hesitate and just fall back to do literally anything else which could be useful. Not making the best play is infinitely better than making a game-losing one. But like we said, within 2 minutes of taking the tower, the ADC has once again thrown their lead. Moving on to our final replay, let's take a look at a typical Draven game. He's absolutely stomping the lane phase and manages to take the tower by 12 minutes. Not only that, but the blue team takes their second dragon right after, putting them on track to get the Infernal Dragon Soul very early into the game. It's fair to say that if Draven is good, this game should be in the bag. But instead of asking a gameplay specific question this time around, we're instead going to talk about the mindset this player should have to close out the game. These are the compositions on both sides. It's fair to say that the red team has a great scaling team composition, both in damage and crowd control. Things could get hairy if the game goes on too long. Therefore, what mindset should Draven have in regards to closing out this game? A. Should he play aggressively with his lead and look to win the game as quickly as possible? Or B. Instead of feeling pressure to end, he should play a slow game and close things out patiently through objectives. It's fair to assume that many players would instinctively choose A, to play aggressively versus the scaling team composition. But that's the poor mindset that throws so many games for lower elo ADCs. Here's a quick question. What does the losing team generally do? They just sit at their towers playing safe, right? That's the only choice they really have most of the time. Winning teams will oftentimes throw their leads by playing overly aggressive at their opponent's towers. In most random fights like these, the losing team can often have the edge, despite their gold deficit. They'll have the tower to provide assistance, while usually having more players in the area defending. That's because when you're losing, you generally play in less area of the map, huddled together defending your base, whereas the winning team is more spread out, at least in solo queue. Therefore, it will usually take less time for defenders to react to a fight. Let's go back to the game at hand and take a look at how this Draven plays aggressively. His Scion just died in top, his Volibear is clearing his jungle, and the Cassiopeia is farming some minions at her bot tower. He also walks up as Taric is going to ward, leaving himself completely isolated for a moment. It's fair to say that this isn't intelligent aggression. The problem is that players feel compelled to push their leads when they have a gold advantage and when they see that their opponents outscale them. Although he played it relatively well, trading your flash in a risky play to get a single kill was not worth this risk of this going poorly. But there's only so long before his luck runs out. The next time he tries the same thing, he doesn't have his flash, and more of the enemy team happens to be there. He throws his lead, giving Ashe a massive shutdown, and baits his own team at the same time to do the same. This will start a series of throws that eventually allows the red team to come back and win the game through their scaling. This is the big reason why we generally recommend for you to pick late game champions in solo queue. People get so tunnel visioned on playing aggressively that they throw their leads constantly. All it takes is one or two poor plays and shutdowns for the scaling team to catch up and take over the game completely, and that's exactly what happened in this game. So, what should Draven have done? That's easy, just be patient. One, he could wait for his teammates to finish what they're doing and to group up. You can push your lead, just do it when you're all together and coordinated. Forcing fights at a random time will usually end up with the defending team having a numbers advantage, so you really need to be careful about that. And two, he was well on his way to a 23-minute Dragon Soul. It's easy to force your opponents out of their towers in the current meta. Dragons and Baron are very valuable to stack later on into the game. If they just sit at their towers, they'll eventually lose. Lastly, we want to make clear that playing the way Draven did isn't always wrong. Taking risks when you need to is important. If his team had 0 dragons and they were more even in gold, then taking risks to try and win the game before the enemy team scaled would be a good mindset. But as we said, that just wasn't the case in the game Draven was in. The win was basically secured if he just chilled for 10 minutes and waited for dragons to spawn. As a quick recap, here are the things that you want to avoid right after you win your lane. 1. Take a recall and spend your gold. It sounds obvious, but don't sit on a ton of gold for too long. Otherwise, you can't do anything with your lead. 2. Avoid silly fights that don't make sense, even if your team is committing to it. Learn to back off and do something else. And 3. Chill with the aggression. Think about the win condition on both sides and decide whether the risk is worth the reward before playing aggressive. Oftentimes, patience is the best way of closing out a game.
So you might be asking yourself, why go to skillcapped.com to improve when I could just watch YouTube guides or play the game? Well, let me show you. Let's say you're an AD carry who's struggling to climb the ladder. Not only would you get over 55 site exclusive courses for AD carry, but maybe really what you've been struggling with is wave control in bot lane. Well, we got you covered with 6 different courses breaking down wave control as an AD carry. Not only do we have the largest catalog of guides for League of Legends in the entire world with over 1,500 videos to watch, but these are then curated by the top coaches and players into courses on every skill and topic you need to master in order to truly improve and climb the ladder. If all of this wasn't enough, we haven't even touched on our catalog of over 700 Smurf commentaries, where a challenger expert shows you how to climb out of your rank, and you're guaranteed to get any questions answered by them directly. Not to mention, we're the only service to offer a rank improvement guarantee. If you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using Skillcapped, you can claim a refund, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Head to skillcapped.com and get the rank you've always wanted. Link in the description below.
Alright, that's going to wrap this guide up. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.